Thank you for joining us tonight and contributing your time to help prepare where you live for wildfire. Tonight, we're here to listen to your community input regarding preparing for wildfire in Sonoma County's 3rd Supervisorial District. Tonight's process will work best from your computer versus a phone, so if you're able to, please join us via your computer. We're recording tonight's meeting and it will be available soon via the Permit Sonoma YouTube channel, where it will also have closed captioning. My name is Tracy Cattleman. I'll be facilitating tonight's meeting on behalf of Permit Sonoma and Digital Mapping Solutions. In addition to facilitating, I'm a registered forester and I've been working on fire in the North Coast for a couple decades. I'm very happy to be here with y'all tonight. I'm joined tonight by Caroline Safford of Permit Sonoma, Esther Mandino of Digital Mapping Solutions, Roberta McIntyre and Kayla Notch with Fire Safe Sonoma, and my colleague Amanda Simpson from Forever Green Forestry. Next slide, please. So we're going to start off with just a few Zoom basics. Please be sure you are muted and to turn off your video. And if you're not familiar with Zoom, you can send direct chat messages to our team via the chat icon on your toolbar, which is likely on the bottom of your screen in the middle. And if you need subtitles, you can enable live transcription on the bottom right of your screen by clicking on the live transcript icon and then select show subtitle. Bienvenidos a nuestros vecinos quienes prefieren hablar en español. Perdona, pero no tenemos interpretación hoy. Si necesita ayuda en español, por favor, mándenos un mensaje por chat. Pero ya tenemos casi todos los diapos con español. Next slide. Zoom provides a couple of options for your audio. If you don't have a great internet connection or having a hard time hearing us, click on the up arrow next to the audio icon, which is below the microphone at the bottom left of your screen. From there, you can choose to switch to phone audio and follow the instructions to link your audio or video or computer connection. If you have any other questions or issues using Zoom, please send Kayla a message in the chat. Next slide. So tonight's meeting is designed to encourage your input to the Community Wildfire Protection Plan, or CWPP process. We're here because we want to hear from you, as this is a community wildfire protection plan. So we have two purposes tonight. First, we're offering you the opportunity to learn from us as local experts about wildfire risk and what you can do to better prepare yourselves as individuals and as communities. And second, we're providing an opportunity for you to identify community values, risks and hazards, and potential projects for the CWPP update. We'll tell you more about that shortly. Next slide. In terms of our outcomes, or what we expect us all to leave this meeting with tonight, we will provide you how you as residents can continue to provide input into this update process throughout the summer, how to use the online hub site to download information and provide input throughout this process, best practices regarding home hardening and defensible space, and information on local fire protection capabilities and needs. We have a lot of great fire folks with us tonight. And the next slide, we'd like to learn from you tonight your local knowledge and concerns regarding wildfire risks and hazards in your communities where you live, priority community values at risk to be protected from wildfire where you live, and finally, potential priority projects to prepare your neighborhoods and communities in the face of the upcoming wildfires. Next slide. So this is our agenda for tonight. We're starting with brief welcome and introductions, including with your County Supervisor Corsi, who will be coming up next, and then the Mayor of Santa Rosa. And from there, we'll hear from Assistant Fire Marshal Paul Lowenthal from Santa Rosa Fire to tell us about the existing Santa Rosa CWPP. We'll provide a series of short presentations about the CWPP and what we can all do to prepare for wildfire right now before fire season. Then we'll be moving into breakout rooms by geographical planning divisions. We'll go through an interactive process with you to identify your priority values and assets at risk to wildfire, wildfire risks and hazards, and potential projects to address those risks and hazards. Please be respectful of your neighbors in this process. Finally, we'll come back together and hear from each of the breakout rooms and close by 7:30. We will stick around another half hour after that until 8 p.m. in what we're calling our virtual parking lot to answer any questions anyone might have following this meeting. I want to say that I know that there are many of you with us tonight who have suffered enormously over the last 5 years from the profound losses due to wildfire. All of us here want to acknowledge your losses and thank you for your strength in coming tonight to collaborate towards finding ways to live with fire in Sonoma County. So now we can go ahead and turn off the slides. We will hear a brief presentation from your County Supervisor, Chris Corsi, about wildfire issues and solutions in the 3rd District. So welcome, Supervisor Corsi. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Tracy.
And you can turn on your video.
I was trying to do that. It says the host has stopped it. So I'll just go ahead.
Yes, please.
Thank you, everyone, for joining us tonight on Zoom. And I want to welcome Mayor Chris Rogers and Assistant Fire Marshal Paul Lowenthal from the City of Santa Rosa, and all of our county staff. Thank you also for putting this forum together. You know, if you've lived in Sonoma County for the past 3.5 years, you're all too familiar with the risk of wildfire. And if you're like me, you're better prepared today than you were in 2017 to individually get ready for and respond to wildfire, whether that's creating defensible space around your home or knowing how and when to evacuate when that's necessary. Your community, and particularly your local city and county government, also are better prepared for wildfire. But we're also aware that we can always do better. And that's our commitment to you, to keep improving. That's why we're here tonight, to get your help with that improvement. So let's think back to 2017 and our community's response to the Tubbs fire. Fire departments responded, local government responded, community organizations responded. But some of the most important response came from individuals who helped their neighbors out of harm's way, who helped strangers in the recovery after the fire. And now we want to get that community, those neighbors, involved in the planning and preparation for our next wildfire. Not just for your families and your properties, but for the community as a whole. You know this community, you know your neighborhoods. And tonight we'd like to use that knowledge to identify risks and make plans now to protect our entire community from the next fire. So thanks for being part of this effort, and I'll turn it over to the next speaker.
Thank you so much, Supervisor Corsi, for those inspiring words. Now we're going to shift the spotlight to the Mayor of Santa Rosa, Mr. Chris Rogers, for a couple of minutes to let us know the perspective from Santa Rosa. So welcome, Mayor Rogers.
Yeah, thank you so much, Tracy, and thank you so much, Supervisor. One of the things that the supervisor hit on that I think is really important for us to remember is that fire knows no jurisdictional boundaries. So anything that we do at the City of Santa Rosa is coordinated with the County of Sonoma. It's coordinated with our local neighborhood COPE teams to make sure that we're all working as one unit, both when there is an existing disaster, but also when we are trying to make sure that our resources are spread as far as they can to have the greatest impact that they can have for preparing our community for wildfire. We're at a very interesting time here in our community. We've seen the sting of climate change. Today is Earth Day. And we also have seen significant resources that have come in that now allow us to do some of the things that we need to do to better prepare our community. So I hope you'll take this time to really hear from the county about what some of those plans are, as well as to provide input on how best we could utilize those resources to make sure that our community responds better, that we're better prepared in the beginning, and that we also continue to lead California in terms of reforms that need to be made. You'll hear a little bit more about what Santa Rosa has done and ways that we can collaborate from our Assistant City Fire Marshal. So I'm going to turn it over right now to Paul Lowenthal. And Paul, I hope you'll explain to folks what exactly we're looking for from them tonight as well.
Thank you, Mayor Rogers. That's a great introduction to the fact that CWPs really can bring everybody together from many jurisdictions. So with that, let's spotlight Assistant Chief Paul Lowenthal.
Good evening. My name is Paul Lowenthal, as the mayor said, Assistant Fire Marshal with the Santa Rosa Fire Department. And I had the honor of helping lead the efforts forward to develop the City of Santa Rosa's Community Wildfire Protection Plan. And as the mayor said, there truly is no jurisdictional boundaries, and that's the benefit of our plan and our involvement in the county's plan, where ultimately we look forward to both plans kind of helping one another, because ultimately the plans themselves lay out the framework to help mitigate our risks and protect our communities, and that's what we're here to try and do. The city of Santa Rosa hosted a number of community meetings similar to the way the county is rolling out their community meetings. And from that, ultimately, it truly was a community-based effort and allowed us to come forward with 42 actionable items that we've been working on immediately after the approval of the plan in August of last year. The plan itself identified the threats to the city, and ultimately a lot of the threats that were identified originate in the county, and that is historically of what we've seen and why it's such an important process that we all work on this together to truly understand how to, again, minimize those risks and implement projects and actionable items to help protect all of us. Of those 42 items that we implemented or that were part of our plan, they cover everything from GIS needs to help track the work that not only that we're doing and the county's doing, but our HOAs and our homeowners and our open space management districts are doing. Improvements to evacuation routes, how we educate our community, all the way down to the need to redesign websites, improving preparedness, increasing structural hardening, treating defensible vegetation, defensible space, increasing staffing, and even recommendations to start with open burning in the city limits. So as we've been working on funding, which ultimately this plan that the county is working on, that our plan will help hopefully secure, we've already started taking action on a number of those items. As you may have seen, open burning will now start in the city, and that's really truly designed to help mitigate, again, the risks of wildfires. We've increased our staffing. I'm now responsible for the implementation of our Community Wildfire Protection Plan and the overall development of the city of Santa Rosa's vegetation management program moving forward. So we look forward to helping the efforts with the county, and again, all of our communities together, making for a successful plan with a lot of items that will be able to help move forward, hopefully with the ability to secure funding, either through grants or other sources, to make this a safer place to live. So thank you for being here tonight, and look forward to working with some of you in the breakout rooms.
Thank you, Paul. And again, thank you so much, Supervisor Corsi and Mayor Rogers and Assistant Fire Marshal Paul Lowenthal. You guys have really set a great stage for us tonight. So we're now going to move into some of the technical presentations for the evening. Excuse me. We will begin with a presentation by Caroleon Safford from Permit Sonoma. And if you've been working in fire, and especially community wildfire preparedness in Sonoma County, you've likely worked with Caroleon. Senator Dodd just last week introduced her as the best of the best in local wildfire preparedness. She's been leading this effort for decades, including as the principal author of the 2016 CWPP, which we're updating now, and she's now spearheading the CWPP update process for the county. Caroleon will be sharing her expertise tonight regarding community wildfire protection plans, values, risks, and hazards, and why they matter in this process, and finally, how homes burn. Welcome, Caroleon.
Bit about what is a CWPP, or Community Wildfire Protection Plan. The CWPP was defined as part of the Healthy Forest Restoration Act of US Congress in 2003. And the idea of it was to improve the capacity to conduct hazardous fuels reduction projects that are aimed at protecting communities, watersheds, and other at-risk lands from catastrophic wildfire, and to enhance protection across the landscape. The motivation for this was the realization from funders like the federal government that there were problems with projects being implemented when one group had come up with an idea to do something without speaking to, for example, the community about it. So they wanted to do a massive fuels reduction project, but the community didn't want to see it done that way. So there would be delays in implementation. And the idea behind the CWPP was to create the forum where everybody could get together and collaboratively discuss ideas for risk reduction in the wildland-urban interface, or WUI, in a collaborative way. And advanced slide, there we go. How does it do that? Brings all the stakeholders in the wildland urban interface, or WUI, together. Those are community members. Thank you all for showing up. Stakeholders and groups of all sorts. Federal, state, and local agencies, fire agencies, land management agencies, basically everybody who has an interest in reducing risk of catastrophic wildland fire in our communities and wildlands. And together, we are supposed to collaboratively identify wildfire issues and threats and prioritize the areas and strategies where we can launch projects to reduce that risk. There are 3 minimum requirements for a CWPP only, fairly simple. First, it has to be collaboratively developed with input from everybody. It needs to identify areas for hazardous fuels reduction and recommend types and methods for treatment in those areas. And it needs to recommend measures to reduce the ignitability of structures. This, in 2003, was a fairly new concept. And it was really important that it was included, because the realization that homes are a really important part of wildland ignition potential it is a very important thing to push these ideas forward and get people to understand them. And these concepts need to be included in projects as we move forward. What do we need to make it a success? First, we need all of y'all to keep on collaborating with us as you are tonight. And thank you very much for showing up. There are a ton of players right now in Sonoma County in wildland fire, very different from 2016 when we wrote the first CWPP. We have COPE groups, we have fire safe councils, we have land management agencies, we have all kinds of people who are doing everything they can to reduce risk. And it's becoming increasingly important that we all get together so that we can align our goals, our outcomes, and expectations so that we can create exciting and efficient projects to reduce the risk to all the environments across Sonoma County. There are basically 2 approaches to doing that. There's large fuels management projects, which are forest scale projects aimed at reducing fire intensity in forested areas. They should greatly improve forest health. They're really important. In moderate conditions, can certainly keep fire spread from coming into the communities. And the other thing that we really have to keep thinking about is within community risk reduction, which includes defensible space and structure hardening. So nearby fuels, to homes, defensible space, and all of that stuff. So inside out, from the community out, and from the wildlands in. There are 2 ways of looking at this. Both are important, but the near home stuff is really, really important to remember to consider. This is something that really is a difficult thing for us right now in Sonoma County, is that we have just been hammered. We have just been hammered for the last 5 years. We're traumatized. These fires have been huge. The home loss has been huge. There's been life loss. There's been enormous disruption. And so we're all really very thinking big. We're thinking big fires, big losses, big fear, especially this year with the weather. But what I worry about in this is that we're so focused on these huge, very difficult to change issues, like what's going on in the 400,000 acres of forest in Sonoma County, that we're kind of not focusing too much on the small things the size of peas, which are really a lot of the story of why we're losing so many homes in Sonoma County. And so a lot of what I'd like to do today is move us out of thinking about really big things to thinking about smaller things. So one of the first people to start talking about this was Dr. Jack Cohen, who starting in the 1990s, started realizing that there was more to the story of wildland fire than forest, that vulnerabilities on the structure itself and the fuels within 100 feet of those structures, what we know as defensible space, are really the 2 primary things which are going to determine whether or not a home is going to ignite in that wildfire. Clearly, there are other things that go into this discussion, like whether catastrophic weather events like we've been seeing can really change the battlefield. What's the position of the house on the slope? What's nearby? So there's a lot more to it than just these two things. But at base, he's absolutely right. If you don't have a raging fire coming within 100 feet of a structure, and the structure is hardened to resist ember ignition, then we've done a lot of what we can do to keep houses from catching on fire. So exactly how do they catch on fire? Well, there's direct flame, which is when there's enough fuel left close to the house that it can catch on fire and the flames hit the house. There's radiant heat, which is when the fuels are so close to the house, if they get burning really hot, the heat alone is enough to ignite elements, vulnerable elements on the home, or break windows or do other things. Typically, radiant heat, smaller cause of home loss in most wildland fires. Not so much the case in tight neighborhoods, which we've been seeing in Sonoma County. But by and large, these two issues, radiant heat and direct flame, are pretty much under the control of the homeowner by designing a good and maintaining a good defensible space. But now we all know this. 80% of the home loss in these wildland fires is due to embers, a full 80%, things the size of a pea, right? These can ignite homes by landing in the gutters, which haven't been cleaned, so they're exposing a very vulnerable part of the roof to heat and flame. They can blow in through foundation and attic vents if they're not adequately screened to keep them out. They can pile up in the inside corners. If the leaves pile up there, the embers are going to pile up there. These are all things that we really need to look at, each of us as residents of Sonoma County, to start to doing the things that we can to reduce these risks on our homes. And much of this responsibility is on us as property owners. This is a great simple checklist, which is on firewise.org. You can check that out. Briefly, what is hazard, vulnerability, and risk? What's hazard and what is risk? Wildfire hazard can be explained as the likelihood that a fire is going to happen combined with the intensity of that fire should it happen. We can get to likelihood by looking at fire history and what are the things that are likely to cause fires that are in that area. And Esther and her team are working on this in our modeling. So we'll have pretty good descriptions of the areas where we have high fire start likelihood. Intensity is defined by the fuels in the area. How much fuel is there? What condition is it in? The topography, how steep is it? How many chutes and chimneys that'll send fire flying uphill? Again, this is something else that the GIS team will be looking at in the modeling and come out as part of the wildfire index that they're working on. Vulnerability is exposure plus susceptibility. So what items are exposed by that wildland fire? So exposures would include things like people, life safety, property, homes and stuff, and environmental. What are some of our critical wildland areas that need to be protected? Susceptibility is the likelihood of damage to those homes or ecosystems should the wildfire hit. So we really need to be thinking about where are our highest risks? What are the values that we need to be protecting that are exposed to the wildfire? How susceptible are they? And then we can design projects that will hopefully hit all three.
We used to focus our efforts on the vegetation surrounding our communities. However, after the last several years of wind-driven ember storms, we're changing our focus to one of working from the front door out to the forest. This means we begin with our homes. We need to harden our homes so burning embers don't have a place to land and smolder and then ignite when they're blown against our homes and other structures by intense winds. From there, we can move out to clear the first 5 feet around our homes of anything flammable. In the CWPP, we can identify projects to create and encourage hardened homes and defensible space, both around our homes as well as around other values at risk we identify in our communities. These activities can begin by supporting the most vulnerable members of our communities. Moving further out from our homes, we can look at projects to improve safe evacuation, whether that be communication to ensure everyone knows how to evacuate as early as possible, to projects to removing hazardous fuels along roads that serve as evacuation routes. Next slide. Continuing out from our homes into the WUI or wildland-urban interface, we can identify priority areas to create breaks in hazardous fuels, ideally shaded fuel breaks to give firefighters a place to slow down or stop a fire before entering our communities. We can also identify priority locations as well as barriers to overcome to safely and easily introduce prescribed fire into the landscape to reduce hazardous fuels and bring our forests and other ecosystems back into ecological balance. Next slide. Other projects included education and community organizing around all of the above, helping to build capacity for our local fire departments and for our local fire civic councils, and COPE, or citizens organized to prepare for emergencies groups. Finally, we can identify best practices to share information with each other before, during, and after a fire. There are also projects related to ensuring the post-fire recovery process is efficient and simple to navigate. We can suggest changes to local planning, permitting, and zoning, to name a few other ideas. These are only a handful of examples of projects we as residents can do, as well as identify and implement via the Sonoma County CWPP. Tonight, we'll have an opportunity to identify many more projects in our breakout rooms, which I'll explain shortly. So please start thinking about ideas for projects you'd like to include in the CWPP. As I mentioned, as we've learned in recent fires, what you do in and around your home can have the biggest impact on your ability to survive a fire. Carolyn is now going to tell us more about the Hardened Homes and Defensible Space strategy for community wildfire preparedness. Carolyn's message is receiving national attention, so I suggest you give her your full attention. Go ahead, Carolyn.
Next, I'd like to speak very briefly about defensible space and structure hardening and what those things are. Defensible space is basically the 100 feet around the house or to the property line where we have reduced fuels in order to reduce the power of an oncoming wildfire. Zone 1 is the area from house walls out to 30 feet. This is what we call the lean, clean, and green zone. You want this as fireproof as possible with no dead and dying plants. We have limbed up stuff and we're breaking vegetation into clumps so that it can't go straight across the landscape up to the house. This is a great idea of what that might look like. We do still have shrubs and bushes and gardens and stuff, but they're broken up so that if the fire got in here, it couldn't march straight across the landscape up to the house as it could in the pre-treatment condition. We're wanting to remove fuels from near chimneys, backing the fuels away from the homes as much as possible, and just keeping this as lean, clean, and green as we possibly can. Defensible Space Zone 2 is often called the Wildland Fuels Reduction Area. In this area, what we're really after is removing highly flammable vegetation, dead and dying stuff out of there, get rid of the ladder fuels that are under trees that could, if ignited, cause trees to ignite in the canopy. In an ideal world, you may need to do some separation of trees in that area, but getting after those dead and dying on the surface and ladder fuels, really important, and separate trees and shrubs as you can over time to reduce the power of that oncoming wildfire. Pretty simple premises, pretty complicated talk. This is a 2-hour talk in and of itself, but that's what you're getting for now. One of the most important things I'd like to make sure and say is that defensible space is not moonscape. Plants are allowed, trees are allowed. Nobody's defensible space regulation is telling you to remove all trees. We're just wanting you to reduce the intensity and spacing, increase the spacing between trees and shrubs so that the oncoming wildfire's power is reduced. Now, bonus zone, this is not yet required in Sonoma County. It is in several neighboring counties like Butte, is the Zone 0, which is from house walls out 5 feet. And what we'd really like to see in here is nothing combustible. This has become glaringly obvious, the importance of it over the last couple of years as wildfires have taken so many structures in California and in our county. It's those very near structure fuels that are taking the embers and catching on fire, slowly smoldering and transmitting the flame onto the house before or hours or days after the wildfire has passed through. So by removing all flammable items from 5 feet, you will do a lot to help your home survive. So that's plants are allowed if they're very small and well maintained. The thing that I see that most people aren't seeing well is our stuff. We leave tons of stuff in this area and we tend to focus on the plants without thinking about the stuff. So if you're out there looking at your house, really look for flammable items, trash cans, wood piles, all that stuff needs to be well away from the building. Structure hardening, quite simply, is reducing the risks that are part of the construction of the structure so that they're less vulnerable to embers blowing in, as we discussed earlier, or catching on fire from radiant heat and other means. Dr. Steve Quarles, who's an awesome expert in this, came up with 6 priorities, starting at the roof, moving to the vents, covering with 1/8 inch or less, vegetation and defensible space, windows, decks, and siding. In order of priority, these are going to change depending on the site and its structure, but these are the basic things that we want to get after as we're talking about structure hardening. There's some great resources out there right now. This is hot off the presses, this Wildfire Home Retrofit Guide from University of Nevada, Reno. If you Google Home Retrofit Guide and UNR, you can find it, or we're putting all of these links in the chat. Dr. Steve Quarles' research is on the Insurance Institute for Business and Home Safety website. Firewise has awesome stuff, as does FireSafe Sonoma. County of Sonoma SOCO Adapts program will be adding lots more educational materials as we go over time. So they're all great places to start to learn what you need to know about defensible space and structure hardening.
Great, thank you. And thanks everybody for your patience. We've had some Zoom gremlins tonight. That video of when I spoke about projects, the idea of that is that those are the types of projects that you can identify and then implement through the CWPP. So we want to give you a little introduction to that before we give you an opportunity to start identifying some of those projects in a few minutes, actually. So the next thing we want to do is hear from you all about what you're doing now before fire season to prepare your home, family, and community for fire. Oops, if we could leave that slide back up, Esther. And Kaylin, if you could go ahead and launch the poll. So what you heard from Carol Leon was really the latest science about what matters and what you can do to prepare your home. So please go ahead. You should see this poll on your screen now. You can go ahead and select these. It should be multiple choice, so you can select as many actions that you've done as possible. So they start with retrofit your home to withstand an ember storm, learn about and create effective defensible space, prepare your go bag to evacuate, help organize your neighborhood for evacuation, work with your local fire safe council or COPE or other group to prepare your community. Or if you've done something beyond that even, please tell us in the chat. And these are all things that you can do to really make a difference. I think, Supervisor mentioned at the beginning of the meeting that we've all learned so much in the last 5 years or so that there's a lot you can do. And so this is what we'd like to hear from you. What of that are you doing? So go ahead and give folks another few seconds to respond to that, and then we'll see what y'all say. You should be able to see the poll on your screen. It probably is coming up just somewhere on top of your Zoom window. It looks different on every different screen. Okay, I'm not seeing any new responses. So Kaylin, go ahead and end the poll and share the results. So hopefully you can all see this on your screen. So preparing your go bag to evacuate, fabulous. That's so important for taking care of your family. That's what we heard first. And then second, learning about creating effective defensible space. Following that, working with your local fire safe council, COPE, or other community group. That's great that you're doing that community work to take care of each other and retrofitting your home to withstand an ember storm. And there were some other ideas potentially coming in the chat, and I'll show you some links here in a moment where you can get more information about how to do all of that. So with that, I think, Kaylin, we can go ahead and stop sharing that. And let me get that off of my screen. So let's see, where are we here? So I'm going to talk about engagement in this process. So if we could bring up the next slide. So this is a part of the agenda where we want to hear from you and learn about your concerns and ideas. We talked about the outcomes tonight as first we're sharing with you. That's what we've done the last half hour. Now we really want to spend the next hour hearing from you. So I'm going to just briefly go through what the engagement process is for the CWPP. And I want to remind you that you can always email us your engagement ideas, and Kaylin's going to be putting the project email in the chat. So we started with a kickoff meeting on February 16th. Hopefully a lot of you were able to attend that. And now we're in meeting workshop 3 of 5 workshops that we're doing around the county, organized around supervisorial districts. We've got 2 more happening in May in districts 4 and 5. And then we've got ways for you to provide input online, and I'm going to show you that in just a moment. Basically, there's a map. So if you're comfortable drawing on a computer screen, you can go onto the map online and give us your direct ideas there for what you want to see included in the CWPP. There's a survey if you prefer to do a survey. And then there's a lot of information on the website. And as I mentioned, you can always send us an email through the county project email, which is in the chat. Thank you, Kaylin. We will be taking all of this information that we gathered from you and the best available science, and really Sonoma County is leading in terms of risk assessment and assessing for wildfire risk and hazard, leading that nationally. So that's all going to be coming together. And then this winter, we expect to have the public draft of the CWPP available. And following that release of the CWPP, the public draft, then we'll have another set of workshops where we'll come back to each of the districts for another set of workshops to hear from you, what you think, make sure we got everything captured. So let's go ahead and see the next slide. And then I think what I'm going to do is try to share my screen. So in just a moment, I want to mention that we have online a hub site where everything's contained related to the CWPP, and including there is the public input map and survey. And so let's see if I can share my screen of the hub site. Thank you, Esther, for stopping your screen share. And just to show you guys really briefly, here's the hub site, and the link, Kaylin put that in the chat. And in the hub site, it's basically a website. You can come down, and here the base map has a lot of great information, background information, and data layers for you to look at. This public input map is where you can go in and draw. This is some directions for how to use it, and the survey, and then there's a bunch of resources. So a lot of this follows up on what Carol Leone told you already about hardened homes and the SoCo Adapts program, defensible space, all that great stuff. A lot more maps and information for you about fire in Sonoma County. And then finally, more links to the county's website and other websites and all the local CWPPs. We heard from Paul about the Santa Rosa CWPP, so you can get copies of all the local CWPPs in the county and more background documents, etc. It also includes our timeline, all that. So there's tons of information here. So I'm going to show you, first of all, that how to use site. This is a great link. We've got a video tutorial up there for you. So it'll show you how to do the mapping, and then there's step-by-step how to use it. And here's the map. So when you pull up that public input map on the hub site, tonight we've got the other areas grayed out, but when you go in, it'll all be white. And then you can use this smart editor. Let me move up my screen here. This little icon down here, and it will allow you to go in and add information, what you think are important values, assets, risks, projects, all that. So further from what we're going to be talking about later tonight, you can go ahead and add them to the map. And if you prefer, you can also do that through the online survey. So again, you can find all of that on this hub site. So we encourage you to go there. You're welcome to give us input, please, and share it with your friends and family. Throughout the summer, we'll be taking input through August 31st. So I'm going to stop my screen share here and see if I can get back to where I am. So I think now we are going to move into our breakout rooms where you're going to have an opportunity to share with us your priority values, risks and hazards and projects. And the breakout rooms are going to start with an introduction by your room facilitator into this evening's process. Then you'll have the opportunity to identify your priority values at risk, those things that you want to see protected in case there's a fire, wildfire risks and hazards, as Caroline discussed, and potential projects. And we're going to show you that we've got some information already uploaded, but you can also start with the information you shared with us in your registration. So this is a virtual process. So we're providing you with the internet links in your breakout room via the chat. And once you see the link in your breakout chat, please click on it to open a new browser window on your own computer or device. So that window is going to be separate from your Zoom window. It'll be basically looking like you're looking at your internet on your computer. And we'll all be looking at the same thing, same time, pretty cool. And from there, you'll be able to add your input to tonight's process. And if it works as planned, everyone can be contributing virtually at the same time. So I'm going to walk you through how that works now. So I'm going to share my screen again and take you to one of tonight's online whiteboards or idea boards and show you how it works and how to contribute. So let me do that screen share again. Here we are. And actually, let's start with Santa Rosa District South. So this is south of Highway 12, basically. So this is the idea board. So this link up here, this URL, we're going to put in the chat for you. When you get in your breakout room, you click on that and it'll open this up on your computer again, separate from your Zoom window. And it'll bring up the idea board for your group. And so what we're seeing here is values and assets, risks and hazards and projects. And these are our risks and hazards and projects that were already identified in the Santa Rosa CWPP. If you want to look at one section at a time, that's up here under view sections. We can look at values and assets. And then if you want to add something, you click on this green button here and it'll bring up a note and you say, this is my sample value. And you just do that and type it and there it is. And then if somebody else has something up that you like, you can click on it and go ahead and click on the upvote and that will add a vote to that. If you made a mistake, you want to delete it, you click here on the trash can, but please don't delete somebody else's idea, either accidentally or intentionally. And you can close it here with the X. So we're going to do that with values and assets, and then we'll go into risks and hazards. And so here, like if you agree that the Justice Center, that the grass-dominated fuels around the Justice Center are important, then you can click on this and it will upvote it. Important meaning that you agree that this is a risk or hazard for your area. I'm not going to click on it now because I don't want to change the vote. And then finally, we'll get into projects. So what we're going to do is we're going to go through these one by one in the breakout groups, and you'll have a facilitator and some folks from the fire department in there to help you through that process. Let's see, and if you're not comfortable inputting your ideas directly to the idea board, you can always add your ideas to your breakout room chat and your facilitator can add them for you. And you can also raise your hand in your breakout room and share that verbally. So with that, I think we're going to also have the ground rules come up in a moment. I'm going to stop my screen while we do that. And just a reminder again, so you can provide input through the summer, through August 31st, through that hub site that I shared, through the public input map, through the public input survey, and you can always send us an email. So last thing, in terms of the breakout rooms, we want this to be a respectful process. So please, if we can go back, thank you. Everyone has an equal voice. Doesn't matter if you've been working in fire all your life or 20 years, or this is new to you, everyone has an equal voice. This is a democratic process. Please respect others' ideas and opinions. Everybody's opinions are valid. Everybody's ideas can go up on the idea board. And if you agree with them, you can upvote them, but no need to disagree or anything like that. So don't delete others' suggestions. And then when we're voting, please only vote for any one item, any one time. So if something's up there you like, click on it once. Democracy works when we all play fair. So please respect that process and respect your neighbors and their opinions. So with that, let's go to the next slide. So our breakout rooms are divided by planning divisions that we created for these workshops, and they're based both on population centers and on ecosystem types. In other words, where vegetation may react differently to fire. So tonight we have 3 breakout rooms. The first breakout room is for District 3 Northwest, which is north of Highway 12 and west of Mendocino Avenue. The second is for District 3 Northeast, north of Highway 12 and east of Mendocino Avenue. And then the last one is for the southern area south of Highway 12, which is Santa Rosa and northern Rohnert Park. And if you identified your breakout preference in your registration, you will automatically be sent to that room. And if not, please let us know in the chat which one you'd like to join, Northwest, Northeast, or South, and Kaylin and Amanda will get you in there. So with that, let's go to the next slide. This is how breakout rooms work. If you haven't done these yet in Zoom, basically the breakout icon. So once you're invited to join the breakout, you click on the join the button here, that blue button, to enter the room and wait for your room facilitator to begin. And you can use the breakout rooms icon, which are 4 squares, to change or leave the rooms. And again, if you need help, send Kaylin a chat. Next slide. And if you're on a mobile device, the icon's usually on the left side near the top of your screen, as shown in this slide. So remember, this process could be difficult from a mobile device. So if you can, please move to a computer now. And next slide. So we're going to show you here the map again. So we'll launch the breakout rooms and help everyone get moved into them. You'll be automatically moved into your breakout based on the area you identified in your registration. Again, you might have to click on that join button. If you're not sure, this map can help you identify and switch rooms if you're in the wrong room. So with that, go ahead, Amanda, and please launch the breakouts. So as we get everybody back in here, and Amanda, do we have everybody back in? Are all of our breakouts closed?
Yeah.
I'm guessing they are. Okay, great. And we have 9 minutes left to wrap up. So thank you guys for trying out that process. We know we had some technical challenges in our group. I do want to remind everybody that this is really the start of the process tonight. This idea of the idea boards is just to get us all thinking, and that you can use the website, the public input map, the survey, the county email to continue to send us your input throughout the summer until August 31st. So why don't I'll go ahead and start with Northeast. And so very briefly, this is what we saw tonight from the Northeast section.
Are we all sharing your screen, Tracy, or are we supposed to look at our individuals?
Sorry, thank you, Roberta. I was looking at my screen, but the breakout turned it off. Okay.
Okay, thanks.
Here we go. So here's the Northeast section, and hopefully you can all see this now. So values and assets, and I'm going to butcher some of these names, I apologize, but the evacuation corridors, especially in this area, Chenate Road, Water Tower, and Cell Tower on Fountain Grove, Oliver's Market, the green spaces and cell phone towers, the Keysight Technologies, the fire stations on Fountain Grove, and then also the green spaces in the parks, including the bird rescue, et cetera. So those were some of the values and assets, and we'll hear from more of you, I hope, over the summer. And then in terms of wildfire risks and hazards, Montecito to Chenate, Brush Creek Road, Bryden Lake, Franklin Avenue, so this whole area. And then also Mark West Springs, Redwood Highway, and these were some that were identified in the Santa Rosa CWPP. Areas with this excessive vegetation, and we heard a lot about eucalyptus trees throughout different areas in this part of the community. And then finally, we talked about some ideas about projects, and we talked about lobbying the city of Santa Rosa to amend the heritage tree removal policy to allow tree removal for defensible space without replacement or fines. And we're going to talk about that in the parking lot if anybody's interested. Increasing efforts to enforce compliance, and then some of the actionable items from the CWPP about evacuation routes and hardening and treating vegetation along roads and enforcement of defensible space. water storage, etc. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and ask Caroleon if you could unmute Caroleon and tell us about the Northwest area. I'm going to refresh my screen here just to make sure I've got it all. Take it away, Caroleon.
So we had a relatively small number of people in our Northwest room. And our resident, Mark, is very concerned about the neighborhood in general, which is historic, has multiple businesses that would be at risk to wildfire, as well as just the historical resources on their own. Vulnerable populations who will become highly at risk in the event of a significant wildfire event. So lots of values and assets to protect. Risks include housing density. It's a very densely packed neighborhood of mostly older homes, which are wooden, and there is a lot of vegetation in that area. The urban nature of the community may mean that people they don't think of it the way that people in more wildland or typical wildland urban interface communities think about the potential for fire. There are issues with people living in the area who are experiencing homelessness, starting fires, unmaintained lots and walking trails have lots of flashy, grassy vegetation. People don't really know much in the area about hardening homes and what could be done to do that. So these are all things that, just like the rest of the county, could definitely use a lot of education and outreach and discussion. Projects, all of the projects in the Santa Rosa CWPP got big thumbs up from all of us who are in the breakout room. We went through and upvoted some of them, but really all of them we thought were awesome projects, and just added education and outreach to get people who don't attend the meetings. So there's our rundown.
Thank you, Caroleon. And Esther, can you give us a brief summary of what we learned from the Southern group? And Esther, you might need to unmute.
Hi, actually Barbara is going to be doing
Go ahead, Barbara.
Hi, everyone. Yeah, I think our South group went really well. We had about 6 people join, and I can talk about some of the values that we discussed. Trails on Taylor Mountain and Crane Creek were really important, and we also addressed that later on in risks and hazards, but those seem like really good places to protect. And then someone also mentioned this really great resource called alertwildfire.org, which is a website that you can use to observe fires as they're happening in progress. And then another concern that we had was air quality. And with the risks and hazards, you can see the ones we upvoted the most were like the amber cast from Taylor Mountain Fire. And most of that is like starts in the WUI, and then it seems like it's going to be a big threat, and that places that previously were thought to be more immune to fire, like you can't just rule out those places, kind of like what happened with Coffee Park. So that informed a lot of like the risks and hazards that we voted on, from Taylor Mountain open spaces to the Bennett Valley unit. And then we also had the creeks running through Rohnert Park as like riparian management, and then the surrounding areas of Rohnert Park being an issue, and how all of that would affect city residents depending on like how the wind is dependent, how the wind comes in is really the concern on either side of the park. And then in terms of projects, there were a couple that were talked about, including like workarounds to CEQA, just because it seems like it's really hard to kind of get these projects implemented. And then also fair warning for public safety power shutoffs. And then again, going back to Rohnert Park being key, is having enhanced roadside mowing. on county roads and kind of having the infrastructure in the county to be able to deal with that amount of projects that need to be occurring. And then again, Ronert Park, weed management. So I think one of the stringing ties into all three of those being Ronert Park being a huge concern.
Great. Thank you so much. Thanks, Barbara and Carol Leon, for those summaries. And I'm going to stop sharing my screen. And Esther, you can go ahead and bring up the final slide. And thanks you guys again for trying out that process. I know it was a little bit complicated for some folks, that there were some technical difficulties. It's been one of those days. But I want to remind you that this really was a way to start us thinking about values, risks, and hazards and projects for this process, that you can continue to provide input throughout the summer. You can use these, the website, the county has a website, which I actually didn't bring up and show you, but that's probably where you went to register for this meeting. And then there's the hub site that I did show you, sonoma-county-cwpp-hub-site-sonomacounty.hub.arcgis.com. And the project email is permitsonoma-wildfire-plan@sonomacounty.org. Really want to thank you for taking time out of your busy lives to join us tonight. Please do let your friends and family and colleagues know to join us for the remaining 2 meetings. We'll be in districts 4 and 5 in May, I believe the 6th and 12th perhaps. Anybody can register on the CWP site. Those are all in the chat again. And we'll be sending out emails from this email if you registered, so you should be hearing back from us. And finally, we're going to be hanging out in our virtual parking lot if you'd like to stay on and talk to us. So thank you again for participating, and good night for those of you who need to head out.